I see from across the room, like they ask the, so what do you do question. And you're like, I'm a sales. And then like their face is like, oh, I thought I liked you.
We talk about how in our sales accelerator, you need to be able to do the 70-30 rule, which means you're talking 30% of the time and your potential client is talking 70% of the time. We need to stop being so focused on what we're going to say and instead of start thinking, how can I listen better?
So the number one way that you can build trust quickly is to show that you're interested and care about the other person.
And the only way we get to that is by asking questions and listening.
So to put a bow on it, to review on that, if you don't want sales to be a performance, have it be more of a conversation.
You can't fake genuine interest. Let me rephrase that. You can, but it's completely obvious and everybody knows what's going on.
Welcome back to another episode of Sippin Matcha and helping you make more sales, where we take anonymous sales questions and give you some great advice that will move your business forward. We'd love to hear from you and hear your question. You can share that at buildingmomentum.info/matcha, and then Brooke and I will talk about it on a future episode. Let's bring Brooke in and check on the matcha situation today. What? Oh boy. Brooke has a rather large matcha cup, and by large, I mean like the size of her head, a cup that she's sipping from today. You doing all right, Brooke?
I am. So just so everyone knows, this is not going to be that it's a super long question, so I need a big matcha. We're going to be recording a few sessions, and so we just thought, let's get a big one. And then ultimately, when I'm stressed, you always make me a matcha, and I greatly appreciate that. And so today...
we may or may not have needed to pull out the extra large. So.
All right, there we go.
So the question that we're dealing with right now is this: how do I not make sales a performance? Lots of people have in their mind what they think a salesperson is, and they're pretty sure they don't want to do that. So then how do you not make it a performance? How do you not be that person? How do you not be someone that you aren't?
Yeah. So I thought this was a funny question, not a funny question, but it just in regards to the timing. I was just at the Sellwell conference in Houston, Texas, and it's promoted by the Good Humans Growth Network. And so everybody in that room is trying to be able to do sales, marketing, growing their business well from a good human perspective. And we had to do this exercise where we would say what we felt a salesperson was like. Even in that room, the majority were pushy, fake, inauthentic. All of these words where you're like, man, even in the environment where you try it to be the most authentic as possible, that's still what people think sales is about. They still feel like it's this performance. And I would encourage, it does not have to be. And if you actually do have it be more of that performance type of mindset, it's going to hurt you instead of help you.
Yeah, I think that's kind of a surprise that people always get in non-work related situations when we're out with people and meeting people for the first time and you're talking with them, and then I see from across the room like they ask the, so what do you do question, and you're like, I'm a sales, and then like their face is like, oh, I thought I liked you. And that, but so it shouldn't be that way. It doesn't have to be that way. And then you say it's probably actually hurting you if it is this big performance.
Yeah.
I know you ran into this a lot when you did sales at Sunrise. Tell me a little bit about that situation.
Yeah. So at Sunrise, when we were there, it was for senior living. And so people were choosing to find a place, a community, a home for their loved ones. And this was going to be usually a long-term type of commitment. It was very emotional, a lot of guilt and frustration, a lot of different emotions going on. And it was a really big investment as well, because it ranged between like $8,000 to $12,000, it's even more now, a month. And so this was not a simple decision to make. All that to say, if you were fake, if you had this like performance type of mentality, or you were trying to just get them to sign the dotted line, the contract, they knew it and they could pick up on it really, really, really quickly. And there were things that were going on. So if you could afford to go to Sunrise, you could pretty much afford to go to any other community that you wanted to. We were usually in regards to the higher investments that families would make. So if you could truly afford Sunrise, you had plenty of options that you wanted to. And so if you didn't truly feel like you are here for my mother's or my father's best interest, I can trust you, then they would just leave. They weren't even going to tolerate it. They didn't have to because they had plenty of options. And they also didn't have to because you can take a lot of like salesy per se if you're just trying to figure something out. Sometimes we give car dealerships bad reps. There's great car dealership professionals out there. There's also some doozies. And so that is one of the things that we think of like, all right, I'm just going to like barrel through it and get it done and be on my way. When you're talking about wanting to find the best place for your loved one, you don't deal with anything. You don't put up with anything. So if it's fake, if it's scripted, if it feels like it's a performance, they'll just go somewhere else because they're not going to do that. If you can't authentically show we truly care for your loved one and this is how we're going to be able to help them, they're gone.
Yeah, and I know. So when we first started dating, it was in deer season in Iowa. And so I may or may not have hit multiple deer at the start of our relationship. I was so bound to be with you that even deer could not stop me. And then on the day that we got engaged, we totaled my car because that's a whole nother story. Anyway.
Yeah, on our way to tell our parents that we were engaged. On the way to dinner, we totaled the car.
Right. All that to say was then it was time to buy a car. And I have a cousin that is married to a family that owns a car dealership. And so I drove 2.5, 3 hours because I knew Jason Lauterbach, go visit Lauterbach car dealership in Newton, Iowa, if you're in that part of the world and need a car, would treat me right. And so, because it's exactly that. I didn't want to go down the street to the car dealership where I didn't know anyone and I'd have to deal with who knows what. I was going to drive and go see Jason and get a car. So, how do you be a Brooke? How do you be a Jason and not be the salesy performance, like, have I got a deal for you type of person?
The very first thing is so many people are always worried about how is this going to come across? How do I tell them? How do I build value? How do I help them to see like that my product service is the best option for them? And I would encourage you, that is not the goal of a sales conversation. We talk about how in our sales accelerator, you need to be able to do the 70-30 rule, which means you're talking 30% of the time and your potential client is talking 70% of the time. We need to stop being so focused on what we're going to say and instead of start thinking, how can I listen better? How can I perhaps ask better questions? Because that is the thing that we're needing to do. We need to be validating what they're telling us. That is the biggest piece. Instead of focusing so much on, well, how can I talk about my product and service? How can I be able to help them to see the value in it? That is not the point. The point is to be able to listen to what they're saying and be able to have some good questions to ask them. So we always talk about how you want to be able to encourage them with the answers they're giving you and explore, meaning understanding what they're talking about, even more asking more clarifying questions.
Yeah, and I think that it's really hard to be super performance based when all you're doing is asking a question and saying, oh, tell me more about that. Or you said this, can you help me understand what that means a little bit more? And then actually being quiet and listening.
100%.
So we went to 70. Now, do you really mean 70-30%?
I do. Yeah. So, because we've created the whole service framework and that's based on all of the counseling that I've studied and because I have a master's in counseling. So we created this whole framework called the service framework and it is built so that it's that 70-30 percentage rate. So we set the expectations where you have a few questions, but literally it's helping them to feel confident and be able to trust you enough to be able to explain their stories, what's going on in their life, what's happening in their business. And if all we're doing is encouraging what they're saying and exploring more into what they're talking about, then when it comes to us being able to explain it, which goes to the next point we're going to talk about, we don't have to spend 15 minutes doing that. So I would say the other piece is skip the pitch.
Yeah, we'll dive into that in just a second. I think I was working with a group this weekend. We were talking about some leadership things and that type of thing. And part of the reason why people don't trust salespeople, and only like 3% of the population trusts salespeople, but part of the reason is because that they think that they're out to get them and all of that. And so the number one way that you can build trust quickly is to show that you're interested and care about the other person. And so when you do this, and when you focus on asking questions and listening in sales, you're building a whole bank of trust really quickly with people, because you're showing you're genuinely interested in them. So you really do mean the 70-30. And then you said the next idea is skip the pitch. So what do you mean by that?
Okay, especially when we're talking about service-based industries. So many times we might try to ask a few questions, and then it's like our turn, and we feel like we have to explain everything that's going on. And we have a whole kind of pitch deck established and ready to go. I would strongly encourage that we don't have to do that. If we truly understood where their pain points are, what's driving them, what's motivating them, and the only way we get to that is by asking questions and listening, then when it becomes our turn to be able to share what we can do, we are tailoring what we can offer, our services, how we have it set up, all of that specifically to the problems that they just shared with us. And so it doesn't have to be a whole pitch deck. I know sometimes you have to do that. I know sometimes we're going to the board. I'm not saying that we don't ever do that, but I am strongly encouraging, if we are having a one-to-one conversation and we're in the service-based industry and trying to figure out, okay, how can we be able to help you? And this is how we can. We don't have to bring a whole pitch slide deck out. We can talk to them and be able to show how we can be able to help them based on the problems they've just shared with us.
Yeah, and I know that we've had a couple of instances in our business where we've done that, and then the person that we're talking with is like, okay, I've got to go take this to my board or my group of people. But what it allows you to do is then when you're crafting the proposal or when you're crafting that pitch deck for that conversation, you can completely tailor it to the things that they've talked about. And so then even in that situation where there's a secondary, like, other stakeholders involved and you got to do the pitch, you can do that. And I know, because you've helped me, I've had multiple people like come back and say, thank you. Your proposal was completely representative of what we talked about and our needs, and it really made a difference. Yeah.
And let me rephrase that. I'm not saying by all means we don't need to do proposals, but I am saying when we're having that conversation, we should not be speaking 10 to 15 minutes without a break. That's what I'm trying to say.
There you go. That's a good thing to say. And it's probably pretty hard to maintain your 70-30 rule if you've got long monologues.
Yes.
So to put a bow on it, to review in that, if you don't want sales to be a performance, have it be more of a conversation that is asking questions and listening, actually listening to the answers, not using the answers as an excuse to launch into your pitch. And then responding to what people have said with the relevance of your product or service. Did I get it?
It doesn't. You did. It doesn't feel. It doesn't feel like a performance at all, and you can't fake that. You can't fake genuine interest. Let me rephrase that. You can, but it's completely obvious, and everybody knows what's going on. So when you truly are interested, and that's the people we're talking to. Like, we're talking to people who want to do a good job in sales and don't want to be salesy and scammy and all of that. And so it's completely possible to be genuinely interested in what they're doing. And it is a great conversation as well. It doesn't have to be one or the other. That's the other thing I would just encourage. Sometimes people feel like we've had a great conversation, and then when it goes into, like, now I have to tell them what it is, now I have to go into the pricing, then they start feeling like that is a performance. That's the pitch. And that's why I want to share with you, it doesn't have to. We just keep going in the same direction we started the conversation.
All right. If you were encouraged by this episode, if you found value in it, we'd love to hear from you. So if you can like, comment, subscribe, share, do all the things, we would appreciate it. Thank you so much for that. And we'll be back again soon with another episode of Sipping Matcha and helping you make more sales. I think
it's
Brooke may
more
be
like slurping matcha.
Brooke may be cramping up after holding the big cup.
Bye, guys.